Joining me now, a powerhouse panel of journalists: Anna Schechter, NBC investigative reporter, also Manuel Roy Franzia, features reporter with the Washington Post, and also Shelby Holliday, a business and political reporter with the Wall Street Journal. She broke several stories about Assange, Roger Stone, and the hacked emails. So Shelby, we begin with you. You've been reporting on Roger Stone for a while now. Is it clear from the Roger Stone indictment that someone in the Trump campaign, potentially the president himself here, committed a crime?
It certainly looks that way, because Mueller went out of his way to say that Stone was in touch with the Trump campaign even after he left in his official position in 2015. He maintained contact with the campaign. Someone was directed to get in touch with Stone at one point to get more information about the WikiLeaks dumps. So it certainly looks like at least somebody in the Trump campaign, Trump himself perhaps, is named in this indictment. And we've heard from other witnesses like Sam Nunberg that they've been questioned about how frequently Stone and Trump communicated. We've heard from the documentary makers of Get Me Roger Stone that Roger was constantly writing memos to Donald Trump. We know that they remained in touch throughout the election, throughout the campaign. So that is certainly significant. I also think, that clip you played of Roger Stone is interesting because he's out there saying that he's totally innocent. He's going to fight the charges. He's going to defeat them in court. That's classic Stone. He likes to attack, attack, attack. However, if you look at the indictment, there are a number of statements he made that are clearly false that we've reported on throughout the year. For example, he told investigators in the House Intel Committee that he did not have any written communications about Julian Assange with his intermediaries. He said he only had one intermediary. He said he didn't ask to convey information to Assange. All of those things show up in emails that we've reported on and are provably false. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually does plan to fight these charges.
Yeah, Shelby, I want to bring up to that point exactly this clip from your report on WallStreetJournal.com. Let's listen to it and talk about it.
I actually have communicated with Assange.
Did Assange give you any info? Because I think if you've got it, you've got to put it out now.
I'm not at liberty to discuss what I have, and I kind of have a foreshadowing, but I was very specific in that I said that I had communicated with Mr. Assange. We have a mutual acquaintance who is a fine gentleman.
All right, that speaks to your point exactly. Roger Stone clearly sold himself as having inside knowledge of WikiLeaks plans and information. So how does he argue his position on that now, Shelby?
Well, throughout the past year, as we've been reporting on him, he has walked that back and said, I was bluffing, I claimed contact with Assange, but I didn't really have it. You also saw a noticeable shift in August. August is a really important time period because Roger started saying that he was in touch with Assange in early August. And then he sort of started backtracking and saying, I'm in touch with him through an intermediary. In Mueller's indictment, Mueller makes it pretty clear that Roger had received information from Jerome Corsi. But when Roger talked to the House Intelligence Committee, he told them it was Randy Credico who was his intermediary. And so the timeline is really important here. And in that video, you saw the text on screen. That was from specifically Mueller's indictment. So they're probing whether or not Stone actually had communication with Assange. But I would note, I think this is important too, never in the indictment did Mueller actually say that Stone received specific information from WikiLeaks or that any information that Stone wanted WikiLeaks to get actually got there. We don't have that connection.
All right, well, I want to hear your perspective because you spoke to Stone several times in the fall. You told him that his name apparently kept getting mentioned in the grand jury and suggested he might get indicted. So now fast forward to now. So did any part of this indictment take you by surprise?
Well, the most important thing that we see in the indictment is that it drives right into the Trump campaign. That's really what all of this is about, making a connection between Roger Stone and high-ranking officials in the Trump campaign or Trump himself. And I would point out that Shelby is correct that Trump and Stone were in contact during the campaign. We reported about all these late-night phone calls that Trump would make to Roger Stone. They'd appear on his phone as coming in from an unknown caller. And in that very key month in August, when all of the WikiLeaks talk is bubbling in Roger Stone's text messages, he gets some information about WikiLeaks on August 2nd. On August 3rd, he talks to Donald Trump on the phone.
Well, I want to bring this aspect of it as well. It's part of your interview with him from last fall. Let's remind our viewers about that.
You get indicted, Roger?
I have no idea. I could be framed. This I can tell you. I don't believe that I will be charged in any crime that relates to Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration or John Podesta's Fakakta emails, which I have no advance notice or knowledge of. I'm certainly guilty of bluffing and posturing and punking the Democrats.
All right, so he said he was just punking the Democrats. Is there any way to gauge exactly what truth is there here, Manuel?
Well, his biggest defense is going to be that he's a braggart and he exaggerates a lot, and that he likes to go on television and tease reporters and mess with the Democrats. Whether a jury eventually will weigh that against some of these statements that seem to be in contradiction to the facts will be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and talking about these indictments, Anna, I'm bringing you in. They reflect Roger Stone's testimony to Congress, whether it's, charges of lying or obstructing witness tampering. Is there any sense that he'll face more charges? And here's the thing. Why didn't Roger Stone ever testify in the grand jury? His lawyer says he was never contacted by Mueller, never interviewed, never asked any questions, and then now this.
This has been many, many months in the making, and as your earlier guest said, Michael Caputo was talking about it this morning. Roger Stone wasn't surprised. He's been expecting, I think, the lying to Congress charges. And if you look at the indictment, that's really the key here. There's this narrative that shows Roger Stone, the leader of a group of people, desperately trying to find out exactly what Assange had, and his multiple attempts to get his associates to either get to London or get their associate in London to get to the Ecuadorian embassy. So that's really the heart of this indictment. You also have witness intimidation as one of the charges here. But we really don't see, as Shelby said earlier, a direct link between the Russians that hacked the emails and Roger Stone. So it remains to be seen if there is more to come, an indictment that is more directly looking at collusion. And we really don't know.
And where the president fits in.
That's exactly right. So there is more to come.
Yeah, we've heard Stone defend not just himself, but also the president time and time again last night as well. Let's listen to that.
Watching reporters jump to conclusions, Tucker, and say, oh, well, the Trump campaign official who directed Stone to find out about WikiLeaks was Donald Trump. No, it was not. There are several things in here in the indictment that are simply not true.
So who was it if it wasn't the president? Who is?
Well, I have to speculate about that because since it never happened, it appears to me that they have composed testimony for someone. Perhaps Rick Gates, perhaps Steve Bannon.
Yeah, all right. So, Anna, given that you have this meter of peril here, where does the needle fall when it comes to the president?
That's a great question. We just don't know when it comes to the president. But what our own NBC's own Kristen Welker reported yesterday is that top Trump campaign official was Steve Bannon. Now, Steve Bannon has said Roger was trying to get in touch with me and I was brushing him off. We didn't really take him seriously. He was just trying to seem relevant. But the thing is that Mueller has all of these communications, and so he has access to really know exactly what went on during that key time frame from August through November, and during that time frame when the Podesta emails were dropping, starting in October. And so it remains to be seen. We just have to wait until the next document comes out, because as you all know, there have been very few leaks, if any, coming out of the special counsel's office. So we all just have to wait and see. We were waiting for the Roger Stone indictment. It came down Friday. We saw a narrative play out where Roger Stone would have loved to find out and get his hands on exactly what Assange had. Possibly from Assange himself. That would have been great. But let's see what Mueller comes up with next and if he has anything more, because we really don't know.
Yeah, in that case, as we wait, Shelby, all of us, as the president waits, what does this particular indictment mean for him?
Well, it's another person very close to the president who is now charged with lying to investigators about his contacts, not so much with Russians, but with an organization that is believed by many in the intelligence community to be a cutout for Russia. I thought that Stone interview clip from Tucker Carlson was really interesting because he's posing this as a he said. And when you looked at the Mueller indictment, what was significant to me is not just so much what was in it, but what was not in it. Mueller was very specific about written communications, text messages, emails, things that were in concrete writing. What was not in it are some of the stories we've heard from Jerome Corsi and other Stone associates that may be more of a he said, because a lot of Stone's associates are not necessarily credible people. And it looks like Mueller doesn't want to get into that sort of he said battle with him. So Jerome Corsi said that he told Roger Stone Assange had Podesta's emails. He said he figured it out. And then he also said he helped Stone cover up Stone's infamous Podesta's time in the barrel tweet by creating a cover story for that tweet. And he says Roger asked him to help create a cover story. However, that did not show up in the indictment. So it's unclear if Mueller plans to use that at a later time, perhaps in another indictment, or if it's just too tricky to get into that he said with the Roger Stone and his associate.
Manuel, I want you to go back to this point you made just moments ago. Really fascinating here. The president apparently calling Stone on the date, this timeline here of August 3rd, you mentioned, the day after Stone apparently getting information on WikiLeaks. So delve into that a little bit more.
Sure. At this time period, Roger Stone is kicking back and forth a lot of tips with Jerome Corsi about WikiLeaks, and they are getting more and more certain that something big is coming. And on August 2nd, they communicate very specifically about that possibility. And we know from Roger Stone's own statements that he talked to Donald Trump on August 3rd, and yet Roger says that the topic of WikiLeaks did not come up in that conversation. That is going to be a tough sell because Roger was so interested in that topic, it would really be difficult to imagine that he would be talking to Donald Trump the very next day and not even bring this up in passing. But that's what he says.
Yeah, wow.
I would love to just add one other thing.
Sure,
On
Shelby,
August
go ahead.
4th, the day after that, Roger Stone emailed Sam Nunberg and said, I dined with my new pal Julian Assange last night. He says he never really dined with Assange, but Manuel's right. He was always constantly talking about it when you look at his emails and his public statements and his private statements.
Yeah, interesting you bring up Sam Nunberg. We're going to talk to him in our next hour. But before we let you go, Anna, I want to ask you, Roger Stone, right away, we saw him with his press conference. We saw him on cable news last night. And again, just a few moments ago, outside of his home there in Florida. He says he's not going to bend. He's not going to fold. Do you see him at all flipping down the line?
That's a great question, and there is much debate in the press from last night through this morning. Is he going to flip? I really don't know. To me, he's insinuated absolutely not for months, and we've been talking about this for months, and he's made public statements for months that that's not what he's going to do. And we'll see if a presidential pardon is part of his strategy, part of his legal strategy, gunning for that. You know, Roger Stone is quite a character. He can be unpredictable, but I don't think that it matches the brand that he's built up around him to flip on the president. He's been so adamant about that. But we've also seen other people very close to the president flip, like Michael Cohen, who said he'd take a bullet for him. And, you know, jail time, nobody wants to go to jail. I don't think Roger Stone wants to go to jail. So we'll see what happens.
Interesting. Manuel, you've sat down and talked to him. Who's the Roger Stone that you know?
He's a flamboyant, outrageous person. He loves to be in the spotlight. He loves to mix it up with people. He's fearless, and he will be punching both above and below the belt throughout this whole process. Even today, he's on Instagram with a photograph of Mueller as a waiter. And, well, he has also put pictures of himself with Trump on Instagram too, but he has a picture of Mueller as a waiter holding a tray with an empty hamburger in it, and he says #nothingburger related to the indictment. You're going to see much, much more of this. It'll be a boxing match, but it will be a boxing match not played by the Marquess of Queensberry rules.
Yeah, Shelby, your last word in the Roger Stone here, self-proclaimed dirty trickster, now indicted dirty trickster.
Right. What he's saying on Instagram is going to be something I don't think we'll hear so much in court, because he can talk the talk and he can say what he wants about Robert Mueller on Instagram. But when it gets to court, he has to face charges that he lied to Congress and he lied about some things that seem very provably false. And so him just saying that there's a nothing burger isn't going to cut it.
Wow, and
we'll
we're talking about like 20 plus years possibly when it comes to that penalty.
Yeah.
Shelby Holliday, Manuel Roig Franzia, and Anna Schechter, great perspectives from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks.